We continue the search for a good car. I show you what some bad cars are on eBay, some bad listings, the cars to avoid, which ones to go for. And also we look at classic cars as well as sports cars, why you should consider a sports car or a classic car. Stay tuned, subscribe for more.
Now here's something different. Here we've got a classic MGB GT sports car from the 70s, I reckon, judging by the reg plate, late 70s. The seller hasn't given us the number of owners, he hasn't given us the mileage. So you can guess that it's going to have had a lot of owners and a lot of miles, or they just don't know anymore. So bad price. When you're looking at a classic sports car, particularly something made in Britain or something made in the 80s, you want to be looking for rust. This is your main problem. So we can't zoom in on these photos, but even from this distance we can see that the car's got some serious rust which goes from the wheel arch to the back of the wing. Now that can't be repaired unless you cut out that entire section and weld in a new section. But we can even see there's rust down there, so you might need a whole new wing welded on. That's going to cost you for parts about £100, for labour probably another £100, for paint £200 to £300 on top of that. So it's a lot of money just in that one little repair. Again, we can see this bubbling under the paint, which is essentially rust coming through in the front end. Same issue there, and there's a bit on the arch on the other side. Underside of the car looks solid, but there's too much money you need spending on this car. So this one is not for us. Now here's an interesting little car, and here's an example of a bad listing. Now it's not to mean that it's a bad car, but just the listing's bad. For example, we've got the title here of the listing, which is just the reg number of the car, whereas everyone else has described their car. So this might be described as a Seat, a Rosa, or whatever it is, you know, low mileage, blah 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 blah, one lady owner, but they haven't. What we've got, if we look at the listing, is a 3-owner car, 2 previous owners, which is excellent. We've got a car with a long MOT, which is probably about 6-7 months time from now, and we've got a contact number, which is very good. Now again, the description of the car just doesn't make sense. It's just a mishmash of words. I don't know why that is, but we've got a contact number, so we can contact the buyer, or the seller more like, and we can find out more about the car. This is quite local to me, so I'd be tempted to go and have a look at this. It's a no reserve auction again, there's only 1 day left, and the photos look pretty good. Again, looking at the panel alignment, you've got an even gap between the bonnet and both wings, which is great. And the car seems to have a nice sheen to it. There's no mismatch of colours on the car. What I mean by that, like a light red on the wing and a darker red on the door, anything like that, that's not present. The alloys also look pretty good. So yeah, this car could be worth a punt. We'll watch this one and probably place a bid on it. In fact, I might just go see it. So here's an example of a car I wouldn't bid on. Nothing wrong with the Saab. In fact, I've had one of these, they're quite fun cars. But the problem with this one is it's got an LPG installation and they're selling it as a project. This could get complicated and messy. Okay, so it's got no reserve again, so you could be tempted to place a bid on it just because it could be so cheap, but I wouldn't. Car's done 185,000 miles, which is a lot. It's also had 7 previous owners, which means in total it's had 8 owners since the day it rolled out the factory. As a rule of thumb, I would try and keep the number of owners on a car below 5 previous owners. In my experience, when going over that kind of number of previous owners, you tend to end up with something a bit ropey. Yeah, lots of bad things listed there. So this is one that I would personally avoid. Here we've got a 1974 VW Beetle. It's the 1303S, which I'm told is the desirable model. It's tax exempt as well. Cars made before a certain year are tax exempt, so you do not have to pay any road tax on them. It used to be in 1972, but that's recently changed, so you'll have to Google that to find out the exact specifics. Again, this car, although it's listed with a mileage, isn't listed with the number of previous owners, which is quite frustrating, and he doesn't mention it in his long, wordy, massive, bold font description either. So we can assume it's had a few owners. Besides, this listing does have a reserve on it, and the reserve has not been met. So this car, if it sold, if the listing ended today, would not sell if that was the final price. It's just too low. The seller set a high reserve on that. So this car is not for us either. It's a Mark II Golf. It's not a GTI, it's just the humble GL model. But what it's got going for it, it's a no reserve auction, £227 at the moment. Let's have a look at the important factors here. 4 previous owners, that's alright. 73,000 miles, that's excellent. And a long MOT, fantastic. We've also got a few other specs about the car here. I've read this listing, and in fact, as you can see, it's something I'm bidding on. I've been outbid, but I'm not too worried about that. I'm not going to make a serious bid on a car until there's only a few hours, maybe a few minutes left. So I've merely kind of bidded on this car at a very low price, just to kind of watch it without putting it on my watch list. So I can exceed my maximum number of watched cars, which is very handy. Okay, so I know this one's got a little bit of damage to the car, nothing major. It looks very clean, as you can see. Again, all the silver is of the same shade going down the car. Car's still got its original wheel trims, which is great, hasn't been messed with by the looks of it. Interior looks nice and clean, and here's a good tip for you. 72,000 miles. Let's make this photo a bit bigger. The steering wheel on this car looks like a steering wheel that has only done 72,000 miles. From experience of buying a lot of Mark II Golfs, Jettas and Polos and stuff, I know that these steering wheels wear really badly. When they're worn, you lose this kind of effect that you've got on the steering wheel. What happens, it goes entirely smooth, typically around this area first. So this car, according to the steering wheel, looks like it's done the miles it says it has. Then let's see, we can see the pedals down there. That brake pedal's got a rubber pad in it, that isn't very worn. The seat isn't particularly worn from what we can see. Looks like a great little car. I think we might put a serious bid on this. Yep, another one. This time a driver model with 80,000 miles. Now, the reason I'm paying attention to Mark II Golfs all of a sudden is that I recently sold my Mark II Golf GTI. I didn't pay a lot for it. I paid under £1,000 for it, and I sold it for over £2,000. I hardly spent any money on it. But in the last few years, the market for the Mark II Golfs has exploded. So where you could commonly pick up cars for under £1,000 before, those same cars are now going for about £2,000. Again, you're talking about low owner, low mileage stuff. This car has been modified, which isn't a good thing. So you can see the car sits pretty low, it's been lowered. It's got clear side repeaters, it's got modern alloy wheels on it. It's got a Momo steering wheel. Expensive piece of kit, but none of this adds to the value. In fact, it detracts. Also, clear rear lights, they're a bad thing. What people want when they buy a classic, they want a car which has not been touched, it's completely original. Now this car has only had 2 previous owners, but unfortunately it has been messed with. So that's going to put a lot of buyers off. But if you can buy it, source the parts, as in the original parts, very cheap, and put it back to original, selling off the expensive aftermarket parts, there could still be some money in it. In fact, quite a bit. A lot of the MR2s I bought had been modified. I restored them to original specs and sold them on as A1 condition cars, after restoration of course. Last but not least, something a bit more modern. We've got 2003 Mazda RX8. This has the turbocharged Wankel engine, rotary engine, not your standard type of engine. As we can see, straight away this guy's saying headlamp washers don't work, not sure why. CD player has CD stuck in it, might be an easy fix for blah blah blah. So we've got a car with faults. The current owner clearly doesn't want to spend money on it because he would have fixed these faults himself before selling it. This has a reserve and we have no idea what it is. It could be £600, could be £1,000. But something that rings my alarm bells about this car is that even though we've got the mileage listed and we've got the full specs of everything on the car, which happens when you put in the reg number for the car on eBay, the seller has opted to deliberately delete the number of previous owners on the car. Why? Probably because it's trying to hide something. Probably because it's not a good thing to show in the case of this car, because it's probably had quite a few owners. We'll be avoiding this one. So, there's been a development with the Saab Turbo. I've given the seller a ring. Turns out he's a trader, tracking cars 24/7, bit of a clue there. And basically he bought the car, as well as another couple of cars, to sell on and make some money, which is quite legitimate. Exactly what we're trying to do, essentially. But he's listed it with no reserve. So I don't think this car, with its very poor title and very poor description, is going to make its potential. So I've given him a ring, and the only fault with the car is the check strap. And what a check strap is, it's a piece of metal that goes between the bodywork and the door of the car, and it stops the door from swinging open too far. Now he's got a replacement part, he just doesn't put it on. So I think this car could be worth a punt. It looks pretty sweet, and yeah, I haven't got to travel very far at all for it. So yeah, I think I'll be placing a bid on this and a lot of other cars, and let's see what happens. You have to place a lot of bids on eBay, because most things you bid on you will not win. So spread your bets and hope for the best.
So that was a pretty long episode on how to find the right car and how to avoid buying a lemon, as they say in the trade. Next episode we get a bit more than we bargained for with this project. Tune in, where we end up on the other side of the country, and yeah, seeing some things we didn't quite expect. Things don't go quite the way we planned it to go, but that's not a bad thing. Tune in.